I'm Christian Kull. I lead the charge here on client partnerships at Adomni, for those who I haven't met before. A couple things about me. I've been in ad tech for over 20 years, believe it or not. 7 of those years was leading a CPG vertical at a data company. And I started out at an ad agency, which helped me understand the do's and the don'ts of selling, mostly the don'ts. And so 3 weeks ago when I was with at the MediaPost QSR Summit, every presenter that came on stage had a personal anecdote that I thought went really well. And so I was like, all right, I got to step up my game and add a little personal anecdote as well. So here it goes. So right now, I do have a passion for cooking. I mean, an obsession with it. I love good food, fine wine, love to be outdoors. It doesn't even matter what I'm doing, but predominantly mountain biking, hiking, going to the beach, playing golf, even though I'm terrible at it. And I live in Connecticut with my wife, 2 kids, and I have 2 dogs. And let's talk about the 2 dogs. This is Daisy and Lucy, right? And so on the surface, they look like they're alike, right? They're 2 labs. One's a yellow lab, one's a black lab. Both like playing tug of war. You know, they both like going for rides in the car. But they're incredibly different. And so this is Daisy. Daisy is so high maintenance. I can't even tell you how high maintenance she is. In and out, 100 times a day. You know, she's got to be by your side every step of the way. And she's a nervous Nelly. I mean, you do something wrong and she's shaking. You know, she's just a real wuss. But we love her. She's sweet. And then this is Lucy. You know, Lucy is on the completely opposite end of the spectrum. Right? She's a thrill seeker. She's not happy unless she's in the woods. You know, she's independent. We don't even know she's around. She's outside all day. She only comes in when it's time to eat. And so, like, the playbook that we have for each of these dogs to ensure that they have a happy life is extremely different. They look the same, but you have to do something really different to make sure they succeed. And the same thing goes for CPG, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all, right? You can't have a standard, you know, off-the-shelf playbook, right? A bundle that you would just leverage as though it's like a syndicated audience. So you have to think about what's that custom approach that's going to be successful for you as a brand. I mean, and even like thinking about PepsiCo, right? It's not just about all of PepsiCo and having that apply to all brands, because bubbly is going to be way different than a DOOH. And so you have to think about what's that bundle, what's that strategic approach that's going to be different and make it successful for you. And so we're here at Adomni, which is a digital out-of-home, programmatic digital out-of-home platform. Like, we roll up our sleeves and want to collaborate with you to figure out what is that recipe for success for you. And so we're going to get into some of those recipes for success. But first, I just wanted to share maybe a little background on what I see as some obstacles that the CPG industry is facing, right? And so I go back into the meetings that I've had in the CPG sector, and it's just over and over. You always hear the reference to a leaky bucket, right? And so leaky bucket, you have to constantly introduce new households into the franchise, so ramp up penetration, because consumers are leaving just as much as they're coming in. And why is that happening? Perhaps it's the shift in the way they're buying. Maybe they're shifting more towards DTC. We heard that a lot yesterday. Or maybe they're aging out, right? You know, going to a different brand, or not even just the brand, maybe the product line. And then, you know, competition is huge, right? Like, DTC is becoming more and more prevalent. And so maybe that's impacting the brand. And not only that, the retailers that you're working with and are distribution channels for you are also competitors to you as well. They have their own brands. And it's making them problematic. And their brands are always less expensive. And so with the market conditions the way that we all know they are, which is, you know, trouble hiring anyone, supply issues, gas prices are at an all-time high, inflation, you know, not to sound like, you know, Debbie Downer, but it's a rough situation out there, not making it easy for a CPG manufacturer. And also, when you have consumers, when they're going into the grocery stores and the drugstores, think about how many different options you have in front of you, right? There's tens of thousands of options. So how do you make sure that your product gets into their basket? And so not only that, all the options that they have in front of them, there's also a tremendous amount of touch points that you as a marketer, you know, can reach out to these consumers. And it's daunting, right? If you even think about your own daily journey, my own daily journey, it's all these different ways in for a marketer to contact me is scary. Some would say it's a challenge. Others would say it's an opportunity. Maybe it's a combination of the two. You know, but, you know, like, think about, like, just what you do every day, like whether you turn on the news in the morning, whether you're streaming it from your tablet or whether you're watching it on cable, for those who haven't cut cords yet. Or maybe you're checking your email on Gmail, or checking out YouTube for a DIY project, or you're looking for inspiration for what you're going to cook that night on Pinterest, listening to music on Pandora, right? So, so if you think about most of what I just said is typically revolving around task-oriented projects, right, where you don't necessarily want to be interrupted. So how do you break through all the clutter and reach out to these consumers in a meaningful way without interrupting them, right? And not only that, the consumers at this point are demanding more from advertisers. They have a higher standard of excellence. They don't want to get bombarded with ads. They need to have it relevant to their daily journey. And not only that, like I think, myself included, maybe you start, the skepticism is crazy, right? I think it's like guilty until proven innocent. And so bullshit meter is at an all-time high. Hopefully yours isn't dinging right now. And then household penetration, right? So we talked about that, right? Like the leaky bucket. So you have to continuously ramp up households to come back into the franchise. But new user acquisition costs are high. So it's something to be mindful of. And again, what I mentioned before is that you don't interrupt them during their daily journey. It's how do you meaningful connect with them when the time is right. And so the questions that you have to ask yourself are like, how do you meaningfully reach out to these consumers without taking them off? And how do you sustain brand loyalty, not just for your loyals that have been around for years, but also the new to your franchise? And again, most important, how do you reach those customers in a meaningful and unmissable way? And the answer is digital out of home. Enter digital out of home, right? And so I think there's maybe a preconceived notion that out of home is only associated with big billboards and outdoor furniture, transit shelters, bus shelters, and the cliche units you would typically associate with out of home. But it goes well above and beyond that. And so at Adomni we have nearly 40 different venue types, which makes it super exciting because now you could reach consumers throughout their daily journey when they would embrace it. And so from a CPG perspective, you could be inside the point of purchase where you're running literally inside convenience stores or in grocery stores, liquor stores for our friend at Pernod, inside pharmacies and drugstores. You can be crafty and surround all of those different locations as well by using radius targeting to try to encourage people to go into those locations. Other screens like inside shopping malls and gyms, literally just think about being able to target individuals when they're not in the middle of something, right? They're just going about their day when their face isn't buried in their phone. So it's a little bit of a different mindset approach on reaching consumers outside of your device. And so why does digital out of home matter? Again, maybe another preconceived notion is thinking about, maybe the pandemic, nobody's leaving their homes, right? And it's not really true any longer. This is Apple mobility data, and what it's showing is that people, consumers, are walking and driving more than they ever have. And so the start of this chart is pre-pandemic, and then the big dip, I'm sure you've figured out, is when the pandemic hit. And then if you fast forward to today, what you're seeing is that consumers are walking and driving more so than even before the pandemic hit, right? So then you have to say, okay, out-of-home audiences are not just back, they're thriving. And by the way, it works, right? So another preconceived notion that digital out-of-home is just for brand equity, right? At top of funnel, and it's certainly not the case. We're solving for multiple KPIs that are on the bottom of the purchase funnel. And according to this data here, 2/3 of those that are exposed to digital out-of-home are taking an action of some sort. And we're going to go through a couple case studies, but essentially we're solving for foot traffic or web conversion, sales lift. We'll get into that. And this is an interesting data point too. It's published by Facebook, and they're saying that when you are running out of home in conjunction with Facebook, it creates a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. So not only is Facebook magnified, out of home is magnified when they're running in tandem. And it's incredible data only because Facebook has produced it, and for them to say you should actually divert your investment and include Facebook, include out of home, is mind-blowing because if you've worked with Facebook before, they want all of the revenue for sure. And so who's Adomni, right? I've been talking about everything but Adomni. So Adomni is a programmatic digital out-of-home platform. We work with over 350 different media owners And what they're doing is, or what we're doing is able to access all of their inventory in one easy-to-use platform. And so we have cultivated great scale. We're nearly 500,000 screens across 28 different countries, and as I mentioned, across 40 different venue types, screen types. And so we pride ourselves, as I mentioned earlier, as collaborating with you as a team. We really want to be considered an extension to your team. So we encourage a lot of managed service so that we can consider ourselves a partner rather than a vendor. It is a pet peeve, and some of you have heard me say this, I really don't like being considered a vendor. Then we're doing our jobs wrong, right, if we're calling them vendors. Right? We should be considered a partner. And so what that looks like is, we'll help you develop the strategy, we'll create plans, collaborate with you to refine those plans, execute it on your behalf, optimize it while the campaign is live, and then measure it back to a KPI of your choice. And not only that, like the creative assets we can help resize for you as well. Because that's important to call out, because if you're running in multiple markets, it's not abnormal to have literally 40 to 50 different creative assets that you would need for digital out of home, right? And so really all we would need is 2 to 5 sizes, and we take care of the rest for you. So it's just taking the burden off your shoulders and making it a little bit of a less barrier of entry. And so also digital out of home, I think what I like about it is it's starting to mirror that of digital media, right? And so when you execute digital media, you're incorporating segmentation of some sort. There's not one digital media campaign that doesn't have an audience layer onto it, right? And so now through Adomni, you can incorporate first or third-party segmentation into the mix, and what we would do is prioritize screens that would over-index against the segments of your choice. And then for measurement, there's a few measurement options that I'll briefly go through, but one is foot traffic, right? And this is standard within digital out of home. It's essentially saying, does that exposure translate into more people visiting the retailers of your choice? And for those that are interested in DTC, Jeff was talking about it yesterday wherever he is, and he said that he has all the DTC efforts for Colgate, and now you could understand, does that exposure translate into more people going to my site, and more importantly, are they transacting? And we're super excited about this one because when I was in the data business, we did a lot of digital targeting and measurement, and I used to compete with IRI, and here I am now calling them and partnering with them on measuring our campaigns back to point of sale. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with IRI, but we're now partnering with them to measure our campaigns back to point of sale in the grocery, drug, club, and liquor store channels that they have access into. And so they have 90% transaction data on 90% of US households. Pretty cool. Reach and frequency, something that has been a void. Something that's been a void in the industry for so long until now. And so one of our partners has rolled out a reach and frequency tool, which we're now using for our clients for planning, but also for post-campaign, post-mortem, to see how well you actually did at delivering. So this has been a void, and it's now available. It's big. It just shows you how much digital out of home is evolving every day. And so a couple case studies, because the hook's coming out, and that's fine. So lots of campaigns that are launched, and it's going to give you a couple, because we talked about earlier, the playbooks, right? And so this was an espresso ad, a Starbucks ad launching an espresso pod that only wanted to drive traffic into their top 100 target locations. And we did that, and we just set up a radius around each of those target locations to try to encourage foot traffic, and it's exceeded with 42% of those that went into the store. And this is for a sparkling water brand of ours that did want it to do point of sale, reach consumers at the bottom of the purchase funnel. So they were inside C-stores, they were inside grocery stores, pharmacies, and drugstores. And they were also doing the brand awareness screens, leveraging digital billboards, and had really strong brand awareness results. Purchase intent, thumbs up, 51% ad recall. And the last one that I'll touch on, there are more. The last one I'll touch on is this one, where this is Soul Boost, our friends at Pepsi, and they actually provided us data, their consumer DNA, their CDNA that they call it, to understand where the pockets of their most valuable consumers are, because they have robust first-party data. And then we overlaid the core Walmart locations that they have to understand where we should be advertising, and we drove a 31% lift in store visits. And so I'll conclude with this because it was a lift in store sales for one campaign that was running for targeting college students for a back-to-school program, and that is all she wrote. I'm leaving now, and if you want to get in touch with me, there's the QR code. And I know John's going to ask, like, am I around? I'm leaving shortly, but Andrew is here from Adomni and would be glad to chat and brainstorm and geek out to your liking.
All right.